SpaceX finally did it again. But this time what they just brought back from the deep sea will leave you stunned. For 8 long months, a massive super heavy booster lay silent beneath the ocean waves, forgotten, corroding, and seemingly lost to time. It was the 13th flight booster, Booster 13 or B13, and while many assumed it would be left to the depths forever, SpaceX made the bold, borderline cinematic decision to bring it home. But not just for show. The discovery, condition, and resurrection of B13 have sparked a whole new wave of questions, curiosity, and awe across the aerospace world. Why recover a rocket this late? What did they learn from a rusted skeleton pulled from the sea? And most of all, what does this mean for the future of Starship? It all began with a single image posted by Elon Musk himself. A haunting silhouette, mangled metal crusted in ocean residue, its frame still recognizable, but clearly ravaged by time and water pressure. Musk captioned it with a poetic nod to ancient ruins, Starship booster recovered from sea like the ruins of a long-dead civilization. And honestly, he wasn't exaggerating. The image ignited social media like wildfire. Engineers, fans, critics, and aerospace journalists were all saying the same thing. They actually brought it back. And with that, one of the most unexpected chapters in the Starship saga began. This rocket, Super Heavy Booster 13, has a rather unique legacy. It launched on November 19, 2024, carrying Starship Ship 31 atop its 33 powerful Raptor engines. The flight itself was mostly successful. After staging, B-13 performed a standard boost back burn, beginning its descent toward what many assumed would be a catch attempt at the launch tower. But then something changed. Just moments before its intended return, SpaceX systems flagged a critical hardware communication issue. Specifically, Mechazilla, the gigantic robotic catching tower, was unable to establish a stable link with the booster. And when there's even a hint of uncertainty, SpaceX plays it safe. So they rerouted the plan, instructing B-13 to go for a controlled splashdown in the Gulf of Mexico instead. And splash it did, just moments later, violently exploding upon impact, scattering wreckage and slamming its tail section hard against the ocean. Since that day, November 19th, the tail of B-13 has remained where it crashed, submerged, battered, and exposed to the relentless corrosion of saltwater, ocean pressure, and microbial decay. Most assumed it would stay there forever. After all, what's the point in dragging up a rocket skeleton nearly a year later? But SpaceX had other plans. On July 19, 2025, nearly 8 months after its fall, the recovery ship LB Jill arrived at the site. It was a coordinated operation, scheduled quietly and executed with precision. The ship, operated by Secker Marine Holdings, is no ordinary vessel. It's a jack-up barge capable of lifting itself out of the water on 4 towering legs, creating a stable platform even in rough seas. Equipped with sonar arrays and specialized recovery gear, it was designed for offshore oil rigs and wind farm support. But now it had a new mission, bringing B-13 back from the dead. When LB Jill deployed its sonar systems, the remains of Booster 13 were easy to locate. The booster had come to rest in relatively shallow waters, no more than 150 feet deep, about 11.5 nautical miles off the coast of Mexico. That's not unusual for a water landing, but what is remarkable is that the booster remained largely in one piece. Its tail section, still housing all 33 Raptor engine bays, had settled into the silt like a giant mechanical fossil. And now it was time to raise it. Divers and ROVs, remotely operated vehicles, descended to the wreck, maneuvering carefully around twisted metal and tangled debris. They inspected the frame, ensured structural integrity, and attached heavy-duty chains to the most stable points. From above, a massive crane began the slow, grueling lift. Ton by ton, the metal corpse of B-13 broke the surface. Saltwater poured from its cavities. Seaweed and barnacles clung to its skin. And then, like a creature born of myth, it emerged. What came up wasn't a functioning rocket. It wasn't even close. The stainless steel hull was split in multiple places. The skin was corroded and flaking. The engine skirt was still there but rusted and deformed. The COPs, those long, slender tanks that store high-pressure gas for engine operations, were miraculously still intact, but coated in ocean grime and sand. Internal tubing systems were bent, collapsed, or dangling loose like exposed veins. If you didn't know what it was, you might have mistaken it for shipwreck salvage or a piece of World War II debris. But that's exactly what makes it so powerful. This isn't just scrap metal. This is data. SpaceX didn't bring it back to repair it. They brought it back to study it. By analyzing how the materials degraded after long-term submersion, engineers can gather priceless insights into stainless steel resilience, welding fatigue, pressure vessel integrity, and even corrosion rates of specific components. For a company that aims to send reusable spacecraft to Mars, some of which may land, wait, and launch again under uncertain environmental conditions, understanding material degradation is vital, especially for a rocket built with as much steel as Starship. There's also a symbolic element to all this. SpaceX doesn't just launch rockets, they relentlessly iterate. They crash, recover, rebuild, and repeat. Bringing B13 back from the ocean isn't just about science, it's a public reminder of their engineering culture. No failure is wasted. No scrap is ignored. If something can be learned, it will be. Interestingly, this isn't the first time SpaceX recovered wreckage from a failed flight. They also pulled parts of Booster 11 back from the Gulf after its catastrophic failure, but that was done quickly, just days after the flight, and under much better conditions. Booster 11 had shredded itself in midair during engine reignition, so much of what came back was unrecognizable. Booster 13, on the other hand, sank relatively intact. And the time lapse between explosion and recovery, 8 whole months, makes this an entirely different story. It also makes the logistics far more impressive. Imagine the coordination needed. The crew aboard LB Jill had to identify a sunken object the size of a 6-story building, verify it wasn't disintegrated or buried under tons of sediment, send down equipment and crew, hoist the mangled remains back up, and transport them back to shore, all without letting fragile parts fall apart in the process. And yes, they actually wrapped the entire tail section in heavy blue tarps during transport, likely to secure dislodged pieces and protect sensitive structures from further exposure. What SpaceX brought back may look like a hunk of rust, but to engineers, it's a goldmine of information. Each heat-scorched nozzle, each ruptured weld, each collapsed pipe tells a story about the forces at work during booster reentry, splashdown impact, and ocean decay. These are conditions a rocket doesn't face during a standard catch attempt at the launch tower. But in a worst-case scenario, say a Mars booster failing and needing to be recovered from a remote environment, these lessons could be the difference between a successful future launch and total loss. And let's not overlook the cost-saving potential here. By determining which parts held up better under extreme duress, SpaceX can fine-tune material selection for future designs. It may even lead to the development of booster components that are more ocean-resilient by default. If catching fails and a rocket splashes down, partial recovery could still be a viable option. And that could change everything. This recovery isn't just about nostalgia or spectacle. It's about relentless curiosity. SpaceX went to the ocean floor, dug up the corpse of a failed flight and said, "There's still something to learn here." And that mindset, that stubborn refusal to let even a failed launch be meaningless, is exactly what sets them apart. But there's still one question we haven't answered. Why now? Why wait 8 months? Why not recover B13 back in December or January? Well, there's a theory, one that's gaining traction. It might not have been about the rocket at all. It might have been about the engines. Right back to the point. Why did they wait until now to recover it? And what's the purpose behind bringing it back up? As I mentioned, it took SpaceX 8 full months to even begin the recovery. It wasn't due to technical issues like trouble locating the booster or securing a salvage ship. The reason is likely more strategic. The company was deeply immersed in the next stages of testing, particularly the development and deployment of Starship Block 2. Flight 7 in January marked the very first real test of that new generation, and the entire SpaceX team, from engineers to mission controllers, was focused on forward momentum. Recovering an older booster, especially one that was already compromised by ocean damage, likely didn't feel urgent. Another factor that might have influenced the delay was scheduling and availability of the recovery ship. SpaceX doesn't own the LB Jill, they chartered it from Sear Marine Holdings Incorporated. This type of ship is often booked months in advance for offshore oil and wind farm support, so SpaceX may have had to wait their turn. But timing played in their favor. After the catastrophic explosion of Ship 36 at the Massey site, the Starship flight cadence slowed down significantly. This unplanned gap may have provided the perfect window to address outstanding operations like retrieving Booster 13. There may also be a less technical but equally important reason: environmental responsibility. SpaceX is currently facing growing legal pressure from the Mexican government after the explosion of Ship 36 during Flight 9. On June 25, 2025, Mexican President Claudia Sheinbaum made a public statement accusing SpaceX of environmental contamination along the coastline of Tamaulipas. The government initiated a full environmental impact assessment and is considering legal action, citing possible violations of international law, including aspects of the United Nations Convention on the Law of the Sea. With that context, the recovery of Booster 13 doesn't just make technical sense, it might also serve to repair diplomatic relationships and reduce legal exposure. Since the booster drifted into Mexican waters after splashdown, its recovery required permits, maritime coordination, and compliance with international norms. By acting now, SpaceX is showing an effort to clean up debris and respond to growing scrutiny, which could soften potential legal outcomes or regulatory backlash. From a technical standpoint, the tail section of Booster 13 is far more than scrap metal. It holds valuable data about material durability under extreme conditions. Being submerged in corrosive saltwater for over 8 months provides a worst-case stress test for everything from stainless steel alloy performance to thermal protection degradation. The Raptor engines, COPs, wiring harnesses, and structural components can now be assessed in detail, with engineers documenting how different components aged, corroded, or held their integrity. This information feeds directly into the next iterations of Starship and Super Heavy. Recovering Booster 13 also helps reduce geopolitical risk. Leaving a large American-made space asset in foreign territorial waters indefinitely could trigger ongoing diplomatic tensions. By bringing it back, SpaceX closes that chapter both practically and politically. And it's worth noting, this isn't the first time SpaceX has done this. About 10 months prior, they recovered the engine section of Booster 11 from the Gulf of Mexico. That booster was part of Starship Flight 4 on June 6, 2024, and was recovered in late September using a different vessel, the HOS Ridgewind. That ship, a 79.22-meter offshore support vessel operated by Hornbeck Offshore Services, carried out the operation with minimal fanfare. The booster had landed roughly 15 nautical miles off the coast of Boca Chica, Texas, farther out than Booster 13's final resting place. The mission for Booster 11's recovery was similar: extract remaining Raptors, evaluate structural damage, and gather real-world performance data. Photos from the Ridgewind deck showed visibly damaged engines, with the ring segment partially cut for retrieval. The Raptors were still of interest for study, even if non-functional. In contrast, Booster 13's recovery used the LB Jill, a much more specialized vessel designed for shallow water operations. It features a 500-ton crane and can lift itself above sea level on jack-up legs, providing a stable platform regardless of wave conditions. There are major contrasts between these two operations. Booster 11 was recovered just 3.5 months post-splashdown. Booster 13 took more than 8. That timing difference likely came down to location, scheduling, and political dynamics. Booster 11 remained in U.S. waters and faced no international friction. Booster 13 drifted into Mexican territory and became entangled in cross-border environmental concerns. Structurally, B13 also tells a more optimistic story. While Booster 11 was heavily fragmented, with only its engine section brought back, Booster 13's aft remained mostly intact. This points to structural improvements in newer Super Heavy builds, reinforcing that SpaceX is learning from each flight and integrating that feedback into hardware evolution. Of course, no one wants booster recoveries to look like this forever. The ultimate goal is to have Super Heavy land upright, softly, on a catch tower like Mechazilla, or autonomously land on an ocean platform. These underwater retrievals, as dramatic and informative as they are not ideal. They are contingency actions. But that's exactly why they matter. In spaceflight, redundancy and failure data are just as valuable as success. As for SpaceX's environmental strategy, recovering Booster 13 could be a visible gesture of accountability. It signals to Mexico and the international community that the company is taking steps to clean up after itself. Whether that's enough to stop lawsuits remains to be seen. But symbolically, it shows a recognition of the responsibilities that come with operating on a global stage. In the coming weeks, SpaceX engineers will likely tear down the booster piece by piece. They'll take apart the engine mounts, inspect nozzle erosion, photograph insulation layers, and collect microbial samples from corrosion patterns. Every damaged valve or heat damage seam is a clue, a dataset, in their larger mission to build a truly reusable interplanetary launch system. One day this kind of analysis could lead to boosters that not only survive splashdowns but are easily refurbished and flown again. Or perhaps more realistically, it helps SpaceX avoid splashdowns entirely. As SpaceX prepares for its next phase of testing with Block 2 and the upcoming Flight 8, these lessons from the ocean floor will shape the future of Starship. They offer cautionary tales, forensic insights, and perhaps even inspiration for engineers working around the clock in Hawthorne, McGregor, and Starbase. In the end, bringing Booster 13 home was more than a cleanup mission. It was a statement that even in failure, even in wreckage, there is something to gain, something to study, something to improve. That mindset is what defines SpaceX, and it's what will carry Starship forward, one flight at a time.